Invasive species aren't just detrimental to our native ecosystems and native species, they're also impacting us as well. They impact our economy, costing the United States alone over $21 billion a year in control and all that stuff. But they can also be detrimental to us in a more painful way. So that's why I kind of came up with this list of 3 invasive species that I think are pretty painful. Uh, and to get into it, why not start with a little bit of painkiller from Two Guys Brewing, Baby Got Bach. So with that in mind, let's get into it. We've all stepped on a Lego or a little plastic toy that the kids forgot to put up and probably said a few choice words in the middle of the night, but this first invasive species kind of takes the cake when it comes to heel pain. And if you've ever lived in the country, you probably know which one I'm going to talk about. Puncturevine is an annual plant native to Africa, Asia, Australia, and Europe, and has made many people collapse in pain and punctured a lot, and I mean a lot, of bike tires, and costing a lot of little 8-year-old boys a lot of money from his allowance because he had to put more slime in his bike tire. This weed is also known as goat's head, cat's head, devil's thorn, that's fitting, tackweed, and caltrop. This plant can form large mats and outcompete all other plants around it. And just one of these plants can produce 200 to 500 seeds. These little guys here, which start out as a big large seed but then break up into smaller and smaller pieces, usually about pieces of 5. And that's when they spread. They spread by getting onto animal paws, animal fur, equipment tires, little kid bike tires. And its spread is due to that little thorn there. First documented in the Pacific Northwest in 1924, most likely in a shipment of livestock, and has since spread across the country. This plant can also be toxic to your livestock, and I'm not talking about the big large mats it can grow into that they're going to eat, because what animal is going to want a whole mouthful of these little guys puncturing their gums and teeth? I'm talking about the young, fresh shoots up in the spring. So its toxicity and its spreadability is why I put it on this list. And if you've ever stepped on one in your heel, you know exactly what I'm talking about. As if plants weren't a pain in the butt as it is, especially with puncturevine, this next invasive species is going to make you regret even being anywhere near it. Giant hogweed brings a whole different kind of pain. Brush up against this plant and you'll be getting severe burns and blisters. And if you get the sap in your eyes, it can even cause blindness. Its phototoxic sap gets on the skin, and when it's exposed to the sunlight, that's when it causes these severe burns and blisters. This plant is in the carrot family, Apiaceae, and is very similar to a few familiar garden plants, including Queen Anne's lace, which is the reason it was introduced here. It was brought over from its native range of Russia and Georgia as an ornamental plant in the early 1900s. Since then, it has spread along riverbanks, ditches, and roadsides. Each plant, after 2 to 5 years, can grow up to 14 feet tall and can produce anywhere from 5,000 to 100,000 seeds a year, which can stay viable for up to 5 to 10 years in the soil. That can add up to a major seed bank in the soil. With their vigorous early spring growth crowding out all the other plants around it, its prolific seed production, they can easily take over areas, outcompeting essential native plants and obstruct access to riverbanks. And without any natural predators to kind of keep it at bay, this thing is spreading like crazy. And taking care of it, it has to be chemical because it can't be taken out by physical force. You can't go out and pull it unless you're in a full-on hazmat suit and getting the sap all over you. Even then, I wouldn't even chance it. This plant is now federally listed as a noxious weed, which means it's illegal to sell and transport this plant. And I can see why. So, we have puncture wounds, and we have severe burns and blisters and potential blindness. Now let's move into some blunt force trauma. All over the Midwest, fish are jumping out of the water and causing a little bit more than just a traumatized child. Silver carp are responsible for some pretty hilarious videos online. But they are causing havoc, not just for boaters, but for our freshwater ecosystems as well. These Asian natives were brought over in the 70s in order to help clean up aquaculture and sewage lagoons. Their diet consists of phytoplankton, so they seem to be a magnificent biological control agent for algal blooms and other bacterias in these businesses. Until big floodwaters connected all these lagoons to the Mississippi River, tributaries, and the Mississippi River, and now we have this. These fish can grow to extraordinary sizes, making them essentially a freshwater whale, swimming with their mouths open, ingesting all the microorganisms in its path. And these microorganisms are the base of all aquatic food webs, putting these invasive fish in direct competition with all of our native aquatic species. So besides boaters getting broken noses, jet skiers taking an 8-pound fish to the face, and kids getting knocked out of a boat, these fish are causing huge amounts of damages to our native ecosystems and our economy. Where these fish have taken over, you can definitely see the impacts it has on the local economies that rely solely on anglers coming into those areas. Well, I hope you enjoyed this painful episode of Invasive Brews. I know I did, putting it together. But if you did, I would really appreciate a thumbs up and a subscribe if you haven't already. Now, I know there's going to be a lot of invasive species I can add to this list of painful invasive species. But if you have any in mind, please let me know down in the comments. And I could start working on a part 2. Heck, I could probably even make this into a series. But until then, plant native and drink local.